I've spent over 2 decades gaming on consoles, PCs, and even phones. From low-end setups of the early 2000s to today's much more powerful systems. It all started with Nintendo and the Game Boy Advance 20 years ago, but ever since, I haven't really given the company another shot. So the question that I'm asking myself today is it time to switch it up? Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Empti Desk, and today, as you can see, it's not really empty, as we have the two last consoles of Nintendo. So we have the first generation Switch with the OLED screen and the new very popular Switch 2. This is a video that I was really excited to do, as I've been gaming for the past 20 years, I would say, and I only owned two portable consoles in my life. The first one, which was actually my first console, was the Game Boy Advance SP, and then the second one was the PSP, which was my all-time favorite console. So I really like the portable console, let's say, concept, and I've been thinking lately about investing in a new one to complement my setup, which includes the Racing Sim and the Xbox Series S. A big contender today for this portable slot is the new Switch 2, so I thought let's test it fully and make a video out of it. Surprisingly, I never got actually to test the first Switch, even though some friends have it, so I thought maybe before the release of the Switch 2 I can test the first Switch with the OLED screen, which is the best version, see how I feel about the Nintendo ecosystem, and then test the Switch 2 when it's released to really see what were the differences or the improvements brought to this new generation. So that's what I did. I gave myself 3 days with the first Switch and then 3 days with the new Switch to really see and grasp what's the difference between the two. The main advantage that I'm looking for in this portable setup is really the convenience factor. Sometimes after my 9 to 6, I don't feel like spending 30 minutes maybe to set up my racing sim just to enjoy 30 minutes of playing time. So I'm thinking about having this portable console to play in bed, for example, and just enjoy a chill session of a simpler game, I would say. So what's in the box? Both consoles came with pretty much the same accessories. So first of all, you have the power adapters. The Switch 2 promises faster charging thanks to its 60-watt charger compared to the old 39 watts. The docks, I would say, are pretty much similar with the same ports, although it would have been great to have USB-C ports in the new Switch, since it's really the new market standard. They also both come with the HDMI cable, which is needed for the Switch 2 to unlock the 4K resolution or the 120Hz refresh rate in 2K or Full HD. Then we have the Joy-Con Comfort grips, which give you a more traditional controller feel, but I would say that the one from the Switch 2 is more comfortable since the edges wrap around the Joy-Cons, whereas the one on the second Switch can't because of the magnetic connections, so it's not as comfortable in my opinion. Then there is the Joy-Con itself, which is bigger and much more usable on the Switch 2. I really like the fact that the joysticks are larger and feel smoother to use, while the one on the first Switch honestly feels horrendous to use and lacks precision, especially in games that are competitive. The buttons are also clickier and easier to access, especially the shoulder ones, and that of course will help you a lot in split screen play with friends, for example. I even 3D printed some accessories for both generations to make them feel more comfortable, and I recommend that you do the same if you got a 3D printer or just buy them online. And if you're interested in seeing more about my 3D printing journey, I would suggest to subscribe to my channel and expect the next video about 3D printing. My issue though with Nintendo, and frankly speaking with other manufacturers, is the lack of Hall effect sensors. It's something that they could have corrected between the first generation and the second, but they chose not to, and it's a big shame, I would say. It's, for those who don't know, a technology that is actually not new, which prevents joysticks or even buttons from having stick drift, which is apparently a big issue that has plagued the first Switch. So again, it's really a missed opportunity here. And now to the star of the show, which is the console itself. As you can see, the screen is much bigger, going from a 7-inch panel to almost 8-inch on the new one. The resolution and the refresh rate got a bump, going from HD at 60 Hz to Full HD, peaking at 120 Hz for a smoother experience. That said, I think there are two drawbacks to the screen of the Switch 2. The first one is that the bezels in the Switch 2 are large again. It was actually something that was improved between the initial Switch and the Switch OLED. And here I think that we went back to larger bezels due to the fact that it's not an OLED screen. And that is the main drawback that I want to highlight, the lack of the OLED screen, which brings more vivid colors and especially deeper blacks, and that was really delightful in the first Switch OLED. I'm sure that they will release an OLED version in maybe 1 or 2 years with a heftier price tag, but honestly, it's a disappointing fact because the difference is actually perceivable between the two versions. The textures look sharper, not only thanks to the better screen, but also due to the significantly more powerful processor. The difference is actually very clear to the naked eye, even in older games like Rocket League. It becomes even more obvious in docked mode, where the first Switch with its Full HD output in older processor gave me a very blurry and pixelated experience, especially on today's big TVs like this 65-inch. The Switch 2, on the other hand, looks much sharper with its 4K 60 FPS mode and even 2K at 120 Hz. Now it's up to Nintendo and the other game developers, of course, to really optimize their new games to take full advantage of this improved performance. However, if you really care about graphics, I would say go for a proper home console like a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or even S to get a better graphical experience. And you can get the latter one for even cheaper than the Switch 2. Another thing that desperately needed improvements are the internet speeds. The first Switch is really painful to use online, I would say. Even buying a new game from the eShop felt like torture. The new one, however, delivers a much more respectable experience, with sometimes even to 10x the speed in my own testing between the two units. So now, speaking as someone who isn't the biggest, let's say, Nintendo fanatic, here are my takeaways of this week of fully testing the two products. I see Nintendo as the Apple of the gaming sector, both in good ways and bad ways. So first, on the bright side, Nintendo's ecosystem felt really easy to use, and obviously the console is made for the most mainstream audience possible. And it's a positive point because it really invites you to play in a more social way with your friends and family, especially in split screen mode. And it really reminded me of our childhood with the consoles that we used to play socially and really collect a lot of memories with your friends. And it's something that is really a uniqueness today in the market, I would say, and that Nintendo is still keeping as their spirit. So much so that actually in my week of testing, I saw that the games like Mario Kart attracted my wife to come and play with me, whereas it never happened with the Xbox or the racing sim, for example. And due to their positioning, this broader audience doesn't really care about having the best graphical performances or the most cutting-edge technologies. So they just want to have fun and have a hassle-less experience with no fuss. And I think that the Switch 2 perfectly delivers on that. On the other hand, again, like Apple, don't expect Nintendo to be the innovator or the risk taker in the gaming sector. So they probably won't be the first to adopt a new technology, and when you know what's going on in the industry and see what's missing in this console, it could be frustrating for you as a tech nerd. And to be frank with you, I don't see how this console can support the next future AAA games like GTA 6 or even a Forza Horizon 6. Maybe it could come, but I don't see how it can be a good experience, whereas it was struggling, for example, in quality mode with Rocket League. Maybe it's due to an issue of optimization, I am not sure, but I am not really hopeful for the future AAA games, I would say. So if you fall into this category like me, I would suggest go look at something else like the ROG Ally or even the Steam Deck OLED because of the better performances and also the more freedom in the OS. Also, in my opinion, Nintendo has made some odd decisions. For example, the power button is really tiny and hard to press, especially when compared to the volume buttons that are, I would say, just 2 centimeters away. And then you have to go through a lock screen every time you turn on the console, which to me feels like a cheap trick to get you to see ads and promotions. Apparently, from what I read online, their reasoning is to prevent accidental presses while the console is in your bag or pocket. But when the power button is this small and recessed, and you don't even have a double tap to wake option, for example, I don't think that this risk is real. Another thing that bothers me in the Switch is that it's marketed as the ultimate travel console to use in a car or a plane. But there is no easy way to watch, for example, Netflix or Prime Video. And to my biggest surprise, I couldn't even find a web browser. That's just unnecessarily restrictive, Apple style. So overall, I think that the decision to go for the Switch 2 depends on who you are as a user. So if you're looking for a social console to play with people around you, or if you really love the exclusive games of Nintendo like Mario or Donkey Kong, then I think that the Switch 2 is a pretty solid option for you. However, keep in mind that the price tag of the games themselves is really outrageous in my opinion. So please do some research before purchasing the Switch 2. But if you're more of a power user that wants top specs or play mainly solo, I would suggest to look at something else, like for example the ROG Ally or even the PS5 with the PS Portal combo to have more convenience and more performance. This was the first video of Empti Desk, so really thank you for watching, you're making history. Don't forget to subscribe to see more, including the next video where I will talk about 3D printing, so see you there.